We're going to react to Event 7 of this past year's CrossFit Games, the clean into the 200-meter sprint, and we're going to start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in being a better athlete, you want to be better conditioned, you want to be more explosive, you want to be a better weightlifter, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you become a beast. So as a senior international weightlifting coach, I've had multiple athletes compete at the World Championships in Olympic weightlifting. I've been to multiple World Championships for Olympic weightlifting. I've had Haley Reichert, who's medaled at the Senior Pan American Championship. She's getting second overall at the senior level. She's also a World Junior medalist, a World Youth medalist. So I find this event really, really interesting. I wanted to see specifically what everybody's technique looks like. Tia Claire Toomey is in here, so we know like her technique's gonna be pretty solid, but also, you know, what some of these other women look like. And on top of that, I just returned from the Olympics. I was just in Tokyo for about 2 weeks, and I coached 5 different athletes to the Olympics in track and field. So I've got a little bit of an interest from both different directions, where I've got, you know, track and field here on one side, and then that Olympic weightlifting influence on the other. So it sort of sparked my interest when I saw this come up, and I wanted to try and react, because then I wanted to think about it from that sports performance side, is how would I train for this? How would I go through this? So I want to check this out, see what happens.
Can anybody catch Gabriella Magala? 5:13.84 seconds. That is the top time.
Okay, so it's pretty interesting, right? When they come off out of the bat, you know, Tia starts to try and get up to the lead right away. My first initial thought when I look at this is, one, you want to ideally, as a CrossFitter, you've got to have a really, really big ceiling as far as what is your max clean going to be. I think if you can look at it immediately, like, look, I want to push my clean. I think for these women, I think they should try to clean 120 kilos is probably going to be ideal for them to have a huge reserve, so that when they're doing more aerobic stuff, that will be easy. The other factor here is that, okay, they're starting at 210. You know, that's what, 95 kilos. That's not really that heavy. We've had high school women pretty regularly at our gym be able to clean 90 to 95 kilos. So for a professional athlete, I think that's pretty reasonable.
Failed their opening lifts. Haley Adams back to the barbell.
So Haley Adams comes in here and just does like a little Clark. It almost looks like she was a little hurt, actually. So I don't know if she's actually banged up or not. But one of the interesting things that I think we've got to point out is that if you have 120K max clean, right, you should be able to power about 80% of that. So if you start to think about it, like, all right, 90, 95 kilos, that's around, you know, now they're getting up to 215, so that's going to be about 98 kilos. They should be able to do powers there. Now that's where, you know, Tia she still goes into that full movement, but some of these other athletes are just power cleaning it. And that's where I think having a higher reserve can play a big factor into an endurance event like this. Now, the other factor that I wanted to think about is, where's their heart rate going to go? I think they're actually tracking their heart rate here. Typically, we want to see 155 to 170, where they would be holding that heart rate. So it's going to be a factor of, how do you do that in training? You know, maybe once, twice a week, you would push that heart rate up there and try and do that for the most part in your training, like maybe towards the tail end of the week. And then the rest of the week, you might be more focused on technical movements of the Olympic lifts, so that when you get into a clean ladder like this, your form doesn't break down. You know, and immediately I start thinking too, like on the minute drills, you can do cleans on the minute, you can do cleans every 35 to 40 seconds. You can do cluster sets for front squats, for back squats, for single leg squats. And then for the heart rate training, I mean, heart rate training, what I would do is get on the assault bike and try and pair that with some of this stuff. But one of the big key factors that I see, especially with the women here as they're sort of jogging through this 200, is their running technique is not the greatest. And I think that I've always sort of thought that, especially because there's so much endurance involved, if they worked with like a distance running coach that could help them and almost train them like an 800 runner, and really cue their technique as an 800 runner, I think that could also help shave a couple seconds off their time, and it's going to help them be a little bit more efficient. So some of these rules though are pretty cool, where it's like, all right, to get back to the bar, you gotta jump over the bar. Okay, so Barnhart's got a huge clean because she just ripped that in power clean. I think that's right around 225.
The time to beat, it was fun while it lasted. 5:13.84 seconds.
How did this event turn into another 500-meter sprint for time? How did that happen?
It's where I think some of these announcers are pretty poor, actually. I almost feel like some of the announcers give CrossFit the bad name more than the actual events or bloopers that people post and roast. There's no 500-meter sprint. That does not exist. That's not happening in any sport. Okay, so Tia's got great technique. You know, she's been to the Olympics. She's won the Commonwealth Games. She's a phenomenal world-class athlete. It's just, you know, good, solid technique. So that's 230. So 230 is about 105. Like that's not that heavy for someone that weighs about 70 kilos, 75 kilos. You know, we've got a 49, like Haley, 49, 50 kilos can clean 100 kilos pretty much every day of the week. That's where I think some of these women, it's like if they're walking around at 70, 75 kilos, you know, 120K power clean isn't out of the realm of possibility if they're focusing on some serious strength work earlier in the week. And I think that that's the big factor is it's like, try to see as a coach or as a CrossFitter, what's that transfer of training? I actually really liked her technique there. And a lot of the women do tend to have, you know, pretty legit movement. I think that's the big factor here is it's like iron out that technique, create a huge reserve. So if you work on strength work and if you can sit there and say, all right, what's that transfer of training is we raise that clean up pretty high. And then what's the strength movement for the clean? It's gonna be a back squat, it's gonna be a front squat, it's gonna be a clean pull. All three of those movements are gonna help other movements like a deadlift, like a squat, like, you know, sprinting. Front squats are gonna help a lot with sprinting. And so front squats are also gonna help a lot with just feeling that load on your chest when you're under quite a bit of fatigue, that discomfort that you're gonna have. So it's like, I would really, really hammer, that's actually not a bad movement either. I would really, really hammer higher rep front squats just because they're horrible. They're really, really challenging. See, now that's where like she's got a little bit of a hitch in there. And that's just not really understanding what that knee movement's gotta be. There's almost a really long delay where her knee stayed back too long. And that's the thing with O'Brien, if she can clean out that hitch, that could lead to a lot better, you know, performance long term. So Haley Adams is still back there. I think she's gotta be hurt because there's no reason for a top lifter or a top CrossFitter to not be able to hit 90, 95 kilos pretty easily. All right, so now we're heading into the men's version here. And I think this is where you see most of these guys are, they look huge. It's like, yeah, I'm thinking about Kevin Simons. He's competed in the CrossFit Games twice. He's a good friend of mine. You know, usually walks around 185 to 195, closer to 200 at times. He's cleaned about 173 kilos, and that's where I think with the men, I think with coaching in general, you can just sit there and say, all right, where's that ceiling? Where's that point of diminishing returns? I'd say for women, it's probably 125 to 130 on the clean. I think for the men, it's probably gonna be around 180, 175 to 180. It's like if you can get your guys to clean 180 kilos or 175 kilos, that's pretty reasonable. And I think these are also reasonable numbers to expect from professional athletes. You know, we have 160K cleans happening at the high school level here at Garage Strength. So it's like now that's gonna help get everything into reserve. And they're coming out, they're starting at 245. You know, that's 110 kilos, 112 kilos. They should all easily be able to power clean that. Now they're getting into that sprint. Again, we've got to keep thinking about where's the heart rate going to be? Okay, so they've got a beats per minute actually monitor there. So where's the heart rate going to be? What's their strength that they need to focus on? Is it the catch? Is it the pull off the floor? And do they have a grasp of technique? And can you do aerobically based movements in training to help improve something like this event? And then I think from a broader perspective is breaking down, all right, how often is an event like this happening where there's technical coordination under severe aerobic fatigue, and then start to plan your training around that on that yearly periodization model, and sitting there saying like, all right, for this point of the year, we're really just gonna focus on strength and coordination because it's gonna help us have a much larger reserve. It's not that hard to train aerobic capacity long term. You know, you sit there 12 weeks out, 14, 15 weeks out. Now that's when you can really start to hammer that aerobic work. Ooh, Olsen almost fell over his bar there. But that's like unique stuff that they put in. Some people complain about that, but I actually think that stuff's pretty cool. Where it's like, hey, you gotta go over your bar, and you might eat it. I think this one dude too is a pretty good weightlifter. I think he's Colombian. But see, you can even see there with Mayer and Smith, both those guys have zero idea how to actually, I don't know, their running technique is not the best. And I think that's where you'll start to see that a lot of the male CrossFitters, you know, their legs are gonna be a little bit shorter, which is already going to be a struggle for them. They're obviously more muscular. So some of the key factors is they're not going to be that good at runners, but they can make up a lot of ground if their technique improves. And I think that looking at every single event, not just in the realm of strength and endurance, but looking at it from what's the technique for the event that's going to help you accomplish it the best? What's the technique for the running that you're going to be using and tapping into, and having a firm grasp of that? And then also, what are the breathing techniques that you have to try and bring in and utilize to control that beats per minute, to try and really regulate yourself to lower that so it's easier to actually accomplish this. And I think that's where dude, this is a tough event. This is a tough sport. I think that's why I actually like CrossFit, is that it's just crazy. It's like sitting here and just combining the most challenging things into one giant factor and seeing who dies last, essentially.
10th place was also 10th in event number 1.
Now, there was a time earlier in the offseason that Mayer's sole goal was chasing an elusive 400-pound clean.
Okay, so there he's talking about that. Mayer's sole goal was to clean about 400 pounds. And I think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair. It's like a 400-pound clean from a professional athlete is not unreasonable. You can push that, you know, he weighs about 205. Push that with technique. You can push that with some strength work. But that's where a lot of these guys, even Mayer, you know, he pulled that and he had a little bit of a rounded back, jumped back a little bit on the clean. I think looking at that, like some guys will add 10 to 15 kilos, you know, 20 to 30 pounds just from improving their actual technical positions. So they're at 305. See, that's where the guys start starfishing, and that's where I don't understand that at all. At this level, you're at the CrossFit Games, like you should not be doing that starfish at 305 pounds. Most of these guys should be able to snatch that. You know, at 305 pounds there, you should be executing this either with a precise power clean or doing an actual full clean with proper technique.
That's such an anaerobic muscle power movement that you have
Anaerobic muscle power movement.
to handle something 5 minutes plus.
Jeff Adler's time to beat.
Anaerobic muscle power movement.
Closer as we have now just 15 seconds to go before we hit that. Mayer is back in. Less than 30 to go before we hit the time cap. Here comes Alex Vino.
That's what the last unique part here is, that there oftentimes are time caps on these events. So it's like you can sit there in your training. That's a little bit better technique from Mayer. He got a little bit behind it at the hip, but you know, he still goes in and smacks that and wins the actual heat. So it's like timing it from the perspective of, all right, we got 6 to 8 minutes to do this. We've got this crazy challenge, some crazy ladder. We've got something we're gonna do on the assault bike or on the rower. We're gonna get your beats per minute to a certain point and try and sustain it there. And while you're sustaining at that level, you still have to put out a lot of technical movement. So using on-the-minute drills in conjunction with assault bike work or rower work or sprints, whatever that might be. And then at the same time, you could even do sled work. And then at the same time, honing in on what that technique actually has to be. You could do work in the morning where you do technique work. You could do some aerobic stuff in the afternoon, but it's always got to go back to what is the best way to actually execute each specific movement, meaning the clean, the run, whatever it is that you might be doing. So that's going to end up optimizing your actual output. So those big key factors are set the ceiling, you know, find out where that point of diminishing returns for your strength movements are, front squat, back squat, clean pulls, back squats. front squats, that's all going to transfer over to your clean. It's also going to transfer over to a lot of other strength movements. Set that ceiling, that point of diminishing returns for your clean. I think 400 pounds for men, 125 to 130 kilos, so around 290 for women. And then you can work back. You can understand the best way to execute a power clean or a full clean, and then understand the best running technique that you have to utilize for a specific event, in this case, the 200 meters. You know, it's not a sprint. It's still going to be a basic jog, but what's the best way that you can execute the locomotion in that specific running event in the 200 meters. And then after that, working into, okay, how early in the season or in the off season do you want to bring this stuff into your training, or do you want to really focus on some max strength longer, so that later on, you know, while you're focusing on max strength work, you can focus on the technique of sprinting, you can focus on the technique of jogging, you can focus on the technique of, you know, whatever it is that you need to work on. And then as you get, you know, 12 to 15 weeks out, that's when you can slowly start to build in a lot more of that endurance work, and to actually still train your endurance work while building that max strength. Maybe you do some sauna stuff. Maybe you do just longer duration work, similar to what a lot of strongmen do. They will wait later in the year to bring in that cardio, but they'll still do long duration cycling or long duration even swimming, or even just going into the sauna for 30 to 40 minutes, and that's gonna help improve their overall endurance. So if you need help with your overall periodization, click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com and pick up our Parabolic Periodization book and course so that you have a better understanding of how to work all these facets together. Until next time, guys, peace.